The dust swirled lazily through the main street of Copper Creek, carried by a warm breeze that brought the scent of sage and distant rain. It was auction day, and the wooden platform at the town's center drew a crowd like moths to lamplight. Men in worn boots and weathered hats gathered around, their voices a low murmur of anticipation and judgment. Samuel Hayes stood at the edge of the crowd, his calloused hands resting on his belt. At 42, he had the weathered face of a man who had spent most of his life under the western sun. His ranch stretched for miles beyond the town limits, but the vast acres felt empty these days. Too empty, too quiet. On the platform, the auctioneer's voice rang out sharp and clear. Next up, we have Mrs. Eleanor Whitman and her daughter, little Mary. The widow owes $63 in debts, and the child needs care. Samuel's chest tightened as he watched the woman step forward. Eleanor Whitman moved with quiet dignity. Despite her circumstances, her red dress, though simple, was clean and pressed. A white bonnet framed her face, and her hand rested protectively on her rounded belly. Beside her stood a girl of perhaps 8 years, with braided hair and solemn eyes that seemed far too old for her young face. The crowd's murmurs grew louder. Samuel caught fragments of conversation that made his jaw clench. Pregnant widow with debts, ... That child's not even hers. Heard she took her in, ... Who'd want that burden? The auctioneer called for bids. The silence stretched long and uncomfortable. Samuel watched Eleanor's face remain steady, though he saw the slight trembling in her hands. Little Mary pressed closer to the woman's side, her small fingers clutching Eleanor's skirt. Come now, gentlemen, the auctioneer pressed. Fine woman. Here, good for cooking and keeping house. The child can work too. In time. Still silence. Samuel felt something twist in his stomach. These weren't cattle being sold. This was a family, broken by circumstance and the harsh realities of frontier life. Do I hear $5? The auctioneer tried again, desperation creeping into his voice. Samuel stepped forward before he could think twice. His voice carried. Across the crowd, clear and firm. $1. Heads turned, eyebrows raised. Someone snickered. The auctioneer looked confused. Sir, did you say $1? I did. Samuel's gaze met Eleanor's briefly. He saw surprise there, and something that might have been hope. The auctioneer waited, scanning the crowd for other bids. When none came, he shrugged. Sold to Mr. Hayes for $1. The crowd began to disperse, shaking their heads and muttering. Samuel approached the platform as Eleanor and Mary climbed down. Up close, he could see the fatigue in Eleanor's eyes, the way she held herself with careful pride despite everything. Ma'am, Samuel said, removing his hat. I'm Samuel Hayes. I have a ranch about 3 miles north of town. Eleanor studied his face. Mr. Hayes, I want you to know that I won't be a burden. I can cook and clean, tend to animals, and Mary here is a good child, helpful and quick to learn. I'm sure she is. Samuel knelt down to Mary's eye level. Hello there, little Miss. Mary looked up at Eleanor, who nodded encouragingly. Hello, sir, the girl said softly. Samuel stood and gestured toward his wagon. Let's get you both somewhere more comfortable. We can talk on the way. The ride to the ranch passed in relative quiet. Eleanor sat beside Samuel on the wagon seat while Mary rode in the back, watching the landscape roll by. The silence wasn't uncomfortable, but Samuel could feel the questions hanging in the air. Finally, Eleanor spoke. Mr. Hayes, why did you bid on us, and why only $1? Samuel was quiet for a long moment, his hands steady on the reins. My wife, Catherine, passed 3 years ago. Fever took her. We never had children, though we wanted them something fierce. He paused. That house of mine has been too quiet ever since. I see. Eleanor's voice was gentle, and $1. A small smile tugged at Samuel's lips. Well, I figured if I was going to give a family a home, I didn't want to make them feel like expensive livestock. $1 seemed respectful. Eleanor was quiet, absorbing this. What do you expect from us, Mr. Hayes? Just to be yourselves, Samuel said simply. I've got room, I've got food, and I've got work that needs doing. But I'm not looking for servants. I'm looking for ... He struggled for the right word. Company, I suppose. A family, if that's something that might grow in time. The ranch house came into view as they crested a small hill. It was a solid 2-story building with a wide porch and windows that caught the afternoon light. A barn and several outbuildings dotted the property, and cattle grazed in distant pastures. It's beautiful, Eleanor breathed. Samuel helped them down from the wagon. Let me show you around. The house was clean but clearly lived in by a man alone. The kitchen was functional but lacked the touches that made a house a home. Samuel led them upstairs, 2 bedrooms. This was going to be the nursery, he said, opening the door to a sunny room. Figured it would be perfect for Mary. Mary's eyes widened as she saw the space, larger than anywhere she'd ever had to herself. And this, Samuel said, opening the next door, was Catherine's sewing room. There's a good bed in here, and plenty of space. Eleanor stepped inside, running, her hand along the windowsill. Mr. Hayes, I need to tell you something. The child I'm carrying, it's not my husband's. He died 2 years ago. Her voice was steady but quiet. There was a man in town who promised marriage, then disappeared when he learned about the baby. Samuel nodded. I figured it might be something like that. Doesn't change anything. And Mary, she's not my daughter by blood. Her parents died of cholera last summer. She had nowhere else to go. So you took her in. I couldn't leave her alone. Samuel looked at this woman who had taken in an orphan child despite her own struggles, who carried herself with dignity even in the worst of circumstances. Eleanor, I want you to know something. That dollar I paid today, it wasn't to buy you. It was to buy you both freedom. Freedom to choose what happens next. Eleanor's eyes filled with tears she'd been holding back for months. What are you saying? I'm saying you can stay here as long as you want. You can leave whenever you want. The only thing I ask is that you give this old ranch a chance to be a home again. Mary tugged on Eleanor's dress. Can we stay, Eleanor? I like it here. Eleanor knelt down and hugged the little girl. What do you think, sweetheart? I think Mr. Samuel has kind eyes, Mary said solemnly. That evening, as the sun painted the sky orange and pink, the three of them sat on the front porch. Eleanor had prepared supper with ingredients from Samuel's well-stocked pantry, and the kitchen had come alive with the sounds and smells of family. Samuel whittled a small toy horse for Mary while Eleanor mended one of his shirts, her hands working. With practiced skill, the baby inside her kicked, and she smiled, placing a hand on her belly. Mr. Hayes, she said softly. Samuel, please, Samuel, thank you, not just for today, but for seeing us as people worth saving. Samuel looked out at his land, no longer empty, but full of possibility. Eleanor, I think maybe we saved each other. As the stars began to appear overhead, Mary fell asleep against Samuel's shoulder. He carried her inside and tucked her into her new bed. Eleanor following with a tenderness that spoke of months of caring for this child who wasn't hers by blood, but was hers by choice. Later, as Eleanor settled into her own room, she heard Samuel's voice drift up from the porch where he still sat. Thank you, Catherine, he whispered to the night sky, for sending them to me. In the months that followed, Copper Creek would talk about the strange transaction that had taken place that auction day. But Samuel Hayes knew the truth. That single dollar had been the best investment he'd ever made. It had bought him something no amount of money could purchase. A family bound not by ownership or obligation, but by choice, kindness, and the simple human need to belong somewhere in this vast, often lonely world.